Alright, so what you'll be seeing in today's video is going to be a full tutorial on how to use Grasshopper for creating this design. Now, some of the cool things that we can do with this design is we create 3 different circles to create this flare, but we can always shift and change some of the design features by pulling on the sliders here. So if you're fairly new, I'll be going over all of the steps in detail and showing you how to create this design. You can also download this from my website, compettidavid.com. So with that being said, thank you very much for being here, and let's jump right into the tutorial. Alright, so the first thing we'll do is bring in a circle. So this is going to be the start of the geometry. Let's go here to a circle component. Then we'll plug in a radius for the size. Now, if you want it to be a diameter, we actually need to take the radius and then divide it by 2. This way we have the diameter for the overall as 120. So since the radius is half, we divide it by 2, and that will give us a circle as 120. Next, we're going to bring in a scale person. I want to be able to see how big this is. So I'm sliding in here a 3D model of a scaled person that I have ready to go. Next, so this is going to give us some sense of scale to be able to make the decision as to how big to make this. Now that we have this, we're going to copy it. So I'll select it all, slide it down, tap Alt. Now I've created a copy of that circle, but what I need to do is now move it in the Z direction. So we'll bring in a move component, plug in the circle into the geometry, and then use a unit Z vector to move this up. So I'll bring this here and go to a slider. This is going to be the first height. Then what we're going to do is create another circle that's going to go up above this one. So we'll take this, slide it down, tap Alt, and copy this. And then we're going to create another move component, but this time we are going to take this 61, copy it, and then we're going to add this one and this one together. So we'll go to this vector plus this vector and then plug it in here. So what that does is it takes this last circle and it ties it to where that height is, but we're adding it on top of it. So what this does is give us 3 different circles that have, the first one is going to be on the ground, the next one is going to be the second location, and then the next one is going to be that third location. Now, the reason why we did it this way is because then we can change the size of this circle. Now I will hide the input on this one because we want to look at this circle here. Notice that we can change the size of this one, and then this one that we moved all the way up, we can also hide. And now we have the ability to change the height of this one, as well as the circle size of this one. So we have 3 different circles, different sizes. And now we're going to take this one and we're going to add another vector. So notice that this is the Z vector, this is the Z vector. Well, if we want to move this also in the X and Y direction, we can change this unit Z vector for a vector XYZ. Let's go here, XYZ. And then we'll plug in the 100 into the Z vector. So it's basically the same thing as what we had before. But now we're going to add an X and Y slider. So we'll go here to a custom slider. We'll do 100 less than 0. Or we'll do this. Minus 100 less than 0 less than 100. So this is going to create a custom slider from negative 100 to 100 and set it at 0. And we'll plug both of these in for the X and Y. Now notice that since we did that, now we can move this circle. And if we look at it from top view, we're basically moving that circle either in or out in the X or Y direction. And if we do 0, well, it's going to keep it in the center. So let's just move this a little bit to the right. And now let's take a look at here again. And now let's loft these together. So we'll take a loft component, use the start, then holding down shift, I'll add the middle one. And then holding down shift, I'll add the last one. And now notice that we can change all of the sizes that we have here to whatever we want them to be. And we can also shift the top one to be aligned or to be shifted to the side like this. We can also shift it to the Y direction. And then we have the location, so we can make this shorter. Now we don't want it to go up above the top one. So we can either lower this one or also lower this one and then raise one. So let's keep this one at 60. Let's keep this one at 100. This one we'll do 240. This one we will do 60. And this one we will do 72. Okay, so we have the basic shape. Now what I want to show you is how to turn this into a contour that is radial. So now that we have this with this loft, now we want to create an offset to the outside. Now we can't scale it because this is not symmetrical, and we can't just offset this surface. So let me show you the trick on this one. We're going to double click on the input for the loft, and we're going to offset curve because these are line segments. We're going to offset them by a specific number. So we'll do 12.00. So it's going to take those circles and offset them to the outside. And then we will plug in these into the loft again. Now, the reason why it doesn't work automatically is because this is a grafted set once it gets offset. So if we flatten the input, you'll see that it creates an offset exactly 12 inches in the using the XY plane. And then we could just recreate that surface. So that's going to give us the thickness of the contours that we're creating. So for now, we'll hide this. And now we're going to be creating the subdivisions for the structure here. So the first thing we need to do is go back to our base circle. So this one. And also notice that we have the largest circle down here on the ground. But since we shifted it, it has to be at least offset, at least to the point of how far we shifted it out. So the way that we do this is we need to offset this circle by at least 50. So notice that I'm plugging this in here. And when you do it by at least 50, well, we know it's going to cover as much as how much we shift it, no matter what. But I do like to make sure that it goes a little bit more. So I do a plus So 50 plus, and then we'll do a tolerance of 1.0 just to make sure. We can plug this in here. So it always will go a little bit past it by 1. We can always do more than 1 if we want to. And I'll also hide the wire display here so it doesn't overlap or get messy. Okay, so now we have this circle. Now we need to focus on the smallest circle, which is actually the 60. So if we look here in 3D, we have this other circle, which is the smallest one. And we also need to offset it. So I'll copy this and offset this one by, so this is the 61. We're offsetting it, and I'm just going to offset it by 1. So by this tolerance. But notice that it offset it to the outside. So I actually need to go negative on this one because I want to offset to the inside. So we have this inside circle, we have this outside circle, and now the rest of the circles can be hidden. Why? Because we don't need those. Those were just reference ones that we had that we moved up to create this form. And now that we have these two, we're going to divide them using divide curve, starting with the inside one. Then we will use a count number. So let's just go here to 24. And now do the same thing with the ones on the outside. Now, the more subdivisions we have, the more array we're going to have. But notice that we have the exact same amount on the inside than on the outside. So let's now create a line segment between those two. So this line segment starting and ending. So starting on the inside ones and ending on the endpoints here. So now you'll see that we're basically creating a vertical array here. Now, what we need to do is take these and project them onto this loft. So let's do that. Let's bring in a project component. There are different project components. The one that we need is project on the curve onto a B-rep. So the B-rep is going to be this surface. The curve is going to be the line segment, and the vector is going to be in the Z direction. Let's see if we go here to unit Z. Let's bake it and then take a look here on the side. So I do see a little bit of an issue here. So after looking at this, for some reason, there is this gap here. So let's see if we can fix this. So I'm going to just change the number of subdivisions first and see if that fixes that issue. Still has that gap. So let's see if maybe if we change a little bit of the dimensions. And it could have to do with the tolerance here. So let's go back to more subdivisions and then this size. So it does have to do with a little bit of the tolerance here. So let's increase this to like 10 and see if we can just make sure that it goes past it enough. Also, we do need to go past this surface as well. So notice that here for the outside, it also has to account for this 12 offset. So if I go here to this one, so creating two different inputs for this one for the inside offset. Let's keep this one at 6. And this one needs to be tied to this 12. So plus 12 to make sure it encompasses that. And then, so I'll hide the wire display on this one as well because it's kind of switching back from this one. And add so we're taking the original offset for the X direction plus the offset of the surface plus the offset for those line segments to make sure that they cover the whole thing. So now that we've fixed that issue, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did for the inside surface, but we're going to now do it with this outside surface. So now notice that we have the outside and the inside one. I will keep the inside one here at the top. And then the outside one here. Okay, now let's take those and loft them together. So I'll loft the inside and the outside. And if I hide the wire display on these, notice that now we have all the contours ready. So let's hide all of these surfaces. Let's hide these projecting lines from the ground. And notice that now we have the segments that create that form. And we can also change the number of subdivisions here. We can change the depth of those contours so we can make it very thin. Let's keep it here at 12 though. And we can still change all of the sizes here. So this is going to be the size for the base one, for the one in the middle. And then for the top one. And we can also shift it or not, keep it in the center. So let's increase the size of this one. I think it looks a little bit better. Increase the size of the bottom one and a little bit of the middle one. So now with this, let's now give these some depth. So we need to offset this surface by 1.5. And we're going to offset by the same amount in the opposite direction. So we actually need to divide this by 2. I'll delete this one. So the reason why is because if we offset this by, let's make this 2 just to simplify it. If we offset by 2, we want to offset this and make it 2 inches. So we need to offset by 1 on this side and then by 1 on the other side. So we'll copy this, sliding it down, tapping Alt, and then here using negative. So turning this number into a negative, which is 2 divided by 2 equals 1. And now we'll use -1. And now that we have this, we can loft these two. And the reason why it will work is because these are grafted sets. So it's just going to look at this outside one, and put them together. And now we can join these 3 together. So let's join brep join between the surface, the other side that we offset, and then the middle portion. And if we look at here, it has 64 joined breps. And now we can change the thickness if we want. So if we want it to be less, we can do it like this. Now let's hide the rest of the information. And I do like to route this through a geometry component that's empty. So we can plug that in and then use a custom preview. And a color swatch so we can see a little bit of what it would look like with some material. Now what I can see this being used as is if you have, let's say like a lobby or you have a bar or something and you have some columns specifically located in, throughout the space, you can use this to cover up that column if you want to and create this kind of big flare that I think looks really good. The last thing we are going to do now is we're going to go back to these surfaces. And we're going to get the edge of these. So we're going to get the top edge of these 2 and the bottom edge of these 2. So we'll go to brep edges. Plug that into this one, copy it, and then plug it into this one. Now the ones that we need are going to be the outside edges, which are the naked edges. And so we'll go here to list item. And if we look at the input, we have 2, which means we have the top and the bottom. So the top is this first item. And if we click on plus, we'll get the second item. And we'll do the same thing with the one below it, or the one on the outside. So now we have this one, which is the top one, this one, which is the top one. And if we loft them together, it creates the ring going all the way around, or we can also boundary surface them together. Now, the thing is that when you offset this, there's going to be a little bit of a corner that is on the outside. So we would actually want to take the outside one, this one, and offset it by, let's say, 0.5, or let's go 1.5. And override it with this one. Do you see that? But once you offset it, you actually have to flatten the input for you to get that one, unless you loft it together, which you would also still need to flatten it. But the reason why we do that is because we want this surface all the way around, and we want to be able to make sure that these sit not outside of that circle. So we can make it as small as like 1 inch or even 0.5, something so this doesn't overhang. And also that is if we have these, so the bigger we have this offset, the more it's going to overlap. So that's just something else to keep in mind. So let's go back. Okay. So we have the top surface. Now we're going to do, and then here on the inside, same thing happens. So we need to offset this one to the outside and offset this one on the inside using the same slider, but in the opposite direction. And you'll see that here. So now we can have both this one and this one create the circle around the top. And now we can take this and extrude it in the Z direction. And then we'll use a slider here. So we have that top portion. And then copy this down and use this as the input so we can see it with the material. So let's hide these circles, hide these, and notice that now we have a clean end here to this one, and it's determined using this one. So that is how it was originally. Notice that it overhangs, so we can bring this out to cover that. Now let's do that for the bottom part. So taking all of this, we can now copy it down. So not those, just the offset. We can use that same slider. So we'll just copy everything except for these. I'll actually bring these out here. Take these and then copy them down here. Now what I need to do is change the input from the top one and the top one to the top one here or the bottom one here, and then override it with this one. Notice that it did the exact same thing, but with the bottom part of those surfaces. So let's now change the one here. We have this one going up. We want to extrude this in the opposite direction. So let's go to negative component. And then this will be now extruded down. So the reason why we didn't copy these sliders is because this tolerance is going to be determined for both the top and the bottom at the same time. Now you can have them independent if you want to. You just have to create new sliders and plug them into the inputs down here. And then this is going to be the depth of the top and the bottom rim. The cool thing about this is we can always go back to the beginning and change all of these sizes to create a different form. So let's give these a decent number for them to work. So we'll go here to 60, 48. And then here, then the shift can be a little bit less. You can also make this inside one a little bit smaller or the same size as the one at the bottom. And then change where this happens. So maybe raising this one and then lowering the top one. But notice that it's, taking its time to calculate. And that's because we have a lot of subdivisions. We also have to make sure that all of the contours intersect correctly. Otherwise, let's do this. Let's decrease the size of the subdivisions first. And then let's look at the tolerance for the offset. So if we have notice that that circle is now not covering everything. So this circle needs to be decreased. To cover all of that. So technically we could just create a new circle here that is very small. But for now, let's leave it here like this. And let's take a look. Let's increase the size of the big one. I think it looks better. $60 here. And then here, we'll do 60. And now, well, it's a lot easier to change the design with less subdivisions. And then once you like the form, then we can always go back here to 24 to, let's say, 48. I think this looks really good. Let's change this from 36 to 24. Let's see if that. Yep. Maybe this one to 48. That looks really good. Okay. So now that we've basically finished the script here, we can also change. So let's do this. Both of these go into 1. We'll delete this and change this to a darker color so you can see that it's a different material. Now, this is for the most part just the design. There are other things that would be necessary if you want to fabricate this. Like if this segment is really long that you can't just CNC it in one piece, you could break this up into 2 different pieces and then do sections that fit within your fabrication CNC or whatever you're trying to use, and then put them together in different pieces and laminate them together. So those are other things that to keep in mind when doing a design like this. But for the most part, this is creating the design and the intent of what you're trying to do. And then later on, you can get more complex on fabrication. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's call this circle 1, circle 2. Circle 3. This is going to be the X shift. Y shift. And then Z shift. So the Z shift 2 because this is Z shift 1. And so we only have 2 vertical shifts, which is the first one here and then the second one from that first one. Let's hide the wire display on this one just because it's kind of getting in the way. And let's use this as tolerance for array offset 1. And then this is going to be array offset 2. Let's hide this stuff. Although sometimes we do want to see where that is, like I said, to make sure that, you know, the projection works. And then here is going to be division. And then here is going to be depth. I'll group this one and call this surface 1. And then surface 2. This is going to be the contour depth. This is going to be the structure depth. Oh, this one is the top, bottom, offset. So this is what creates that this bit that offsets to create the inside part and the top part that offsets in. So let's hide these first, and then you'll see here. Okay. And so that concludes the tutorial. I'm just organizing things here. So this is going to be contours. And these are going to be, maybe both of these can be plugged into one. Holding down shift. So basically they're separate, and then with this component they become under one. And then here this is going to be top, bottom. Maybe not 50, maybe more like 75. All right, so what we've done here is basically create this flared form using an array that is radial. And we can change all of the inputs. We also created the top and the bottom portion. So a lot of the tricks that you learned here are probably going to be useful for many other designs. For the most part, what I do here is show you more tips and tricks. So hopefully you learned a few new things. If you want to download this, you can download it from my website. With that being said, thank you very much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next video.